Hello friends, it is your friend Grace, the CEO of Mommy Supermodel, and I am here today with another very exciting message. And this one is a little funny, and this is why. I think some of us are constipated. I think some of us are spiritually constipated. I think for some of us our spiritual pipes are so backed up that we need a release. Why do I say that? Because we are not using our gifts. We are hoarding our gifts. We've hoarded them for so long, up to the point that spiritually we have a clog. We need a plumber. And the best way to get a release is to start using those wonderful gifts that God has given you, because they are for a purpose. Someone gives you a fine tool, it's because he wants you to use it. A fine car, because they want you to enjoy the power of the car. Any fine gift, any fine blessing, everything that is beautiful, that is given to us, is for a purpose. And so it is with our gifts. And so in order to escape this perennial constipation, my friends, let us stop hoarding our gifts. Let us start using them. Now, I have two very important examples for us today. The first one is in the book of Nehemiah. Let us go to Nehemiah, the book of Nehemiah, chapter 1, and verses 1 and 2. Now, in this case, we see a Hebrew guy. He was one of the slaves that had been taken to Babylon, captured and taken to Babylon. And so he is also a cupbearer. So he serves wine to the king. So one evening, he comes to serve the king. And he is not happy. Why is he not happy? Because he had just received word that back home in Jerusalem, his fellow Israelites are suffering. That the walls of Jerusalem are all broken, they are in ruins, they've been burnt to the ground. And that everything is just in disarray and the people are suffering. And so his heart was broken. He had this disquietness in his spirit. And it showed on his face. So this evening when he comes to serve the king took one look at him and knew something was very, very wrong. The king asked him, "Why are you so sad, since you're not sick?" So this which I see on your face is nothing but sorrow of heart. The king took one look at this guy and knew that his heart was sorrowful. And why was Nehemiah's heart sorrowful? Because he had a feeling, he was touched by the suffering in his homeland. My friends, what has this got to do with gifts and calling? Simply that the things that move you, the things that will make you weep, the things that will bring sorrow to your heart, are the things that God is calling you to move towards, to go and help solve, to go and tackle. So when you have that disquietness of spirit, when you always see something and then you complain about it, let it not end there. Change it. Because God is making you passionate. God is making you feel for that thing or that person for a reason. It is not enough to notice it and say, "Oh, this is not good. Oh, this doesn't work well." But you do nothing about it. Because guess what? You might be one of the few people, maybe even the only person, who will care enough. Many people will pass the same place and not even realize that anything is wrong. Many people will notice the same individual and think that, okay, everything is okay with them. Only few people will have that sorrow of heart regarding a certain circumstance or situation or people or nation or family or organization, because they have been called to do something about it. They've been gifted with a feeling to feel the infirmity of that situation. They've been called to provide an answer to that situation. So if that's you and you're feeling, if there's any feeling you've been having for a certain period of time now about a situation and you don't like it, it just doesn't sit right with you, and you've tried to ignore it, but it just won't let you rest, my friend, that is a hint. That is a hint that God wants you to use your gifts in that area. And most of the times, when we use our gifts, my friends, the best way is to do it without regard to compensation. I know what I just said is almost heretic, especially in today's world. Like, what do you mean? Like, to do something and not expect to be rewarded, to be compensated for it? Yes, that's what I said. The best gifts and the best way to use them is to just to serve, to just use them for their own sake, because God has given you that to use. And don't worry about it. God will compensate you in ways that you couldn't have possibly arranged for yourself. But that shouldn't be your primary focus. Your primary focus is to use that drive, that dream, that gift, and use it to serve, to ameliorate, to be a balm, to soothe the aching, the hurt, whatever it is you've been drawn towards. My friends, let us see. I told you that Joseph is one of my favorite guys. I learned so much from this guy. And I encourage you to study him as well. Let's go back to Genesis chapters 40 and 41. Okay? In our previous video, we talked about Joseph in the jail, where he interpreted the dreams for the cupbearer and the baker. These two guys were both former officials in Pharaoh's palace until they fell out of favor with Pharaoh, and Pharaoh threw them into jail. And lo and behold, they came to the same jail in which Joseph was locked up. And then when they had their dreams, they were very sad about it. Sad look again. See that sad look? You're noticing someone else's problem. Joseph saw their sad faces, knew something was wrong, and inquired about it. In the case of Joseph or Nehemiah that we've talked about, these two guys, they were concerned enough about the well-being of other people. They had a servant's heart. They were willing to use their gifts. And so when these two guys, the cupbearer and the baker in the jail, tell Joseph that we are sad because we had a dream last night that we couldn't interpret, and we're kind of disturbed by it. Joseph says, tell me your dream. God is the one who interprets anyway. They tell Joseph the dream. He accurately interprets the dream for them. Joseph used his gift. He used his gift with no compensation in sight. The guys didn't promise to pay him. These people didn't have anything to pay him anyway. They were all in jail. They were all prisoners. At that particular moment, it didn't look like there was anything that was going to come out of it for Joseph. He said, well, when you're free, mention me to the Pharaoh. But that was it. At the moment in which he performed his service, at the moment in which he helped those guys, nothing, there was no transfer of money. There was no exchange of favors. There was nothing that came to him. But he was willing to use his gift, even when there was no compensation in sight. Because also first, it started when he was concerned about another person. He had that disquietness of spirit. He felt for them the same way Nehemiah felt compassion for his fellow Hebrews. When you feel for people, that is your opportunity to come in with your gift. God gives you that feeling, that disquietness in your heart. He touches you with their pain, because he wants you to be moved to the point where you will take action to help them. Nehemiah was moved to take action. He asked the king for permission. The king gave him letters. The king gave him permission to go back to his country and supply him with wood, timber, so he can go back and help build the wall that he said was broken down. But it wouldn't have happened if two things hadn't first of all taken place. If he hadn't been worried about the condition of other people. If he was indifferent to their suffering, it would never have happened. Also, it wouldn't have happened if he wasn't willing to avail himself to serve. So when the king asked him, what do you want to do? He said, I want to go back home and help my people. He was willing to use his gift. He didn't have to leave Babylon. He was serving the king. He had a privileged position. He had a lucrative job. He could have just forgotten about his fellow brothers and sisters and just lived a nice, cool life in Babylon. But he left all of that and went back home to help, because that was his calling. His heart was being pulled in that direction, and he responded. Some of us will have that spiritual constipation that I talked about, because when we have that yearning to do something, we press it down, we suppress it, we do not respond, we leave our gifts dormant, we hoard them and we keep them and we keep them, and so we don't get any blessing out of them. No return comes to us. Nehemiah ended up being the governor back in Jerusalem when he went back. He ended up being one of the great leaders of those people. He helped them rebuild their place. He helped them try to recover get back to their old lives before they were captives. And they too never forgot him. Back to Joseph again, another example. When he used his gift and interpreted his dream to these prisoners who had nothing to offer him, for whom he didn't even have any reason to care. You know, Joseph could have been bitter. Could have been said, you know what, I'm just going to sit here and only mind my business. After all, my brothers were mean to me. They sold me into slavery. I came in here. I was trying to do my best in Potiphar's house, and that wicked wife of his lied on me falsely, and I was unjustly thrown into jail. I don't deserve to be here, and so I'm pissed off. I have righteous indignation. I'm just going to mind my business. I'm going to ignore everybody. In fact, I'm going to start cutting corners. After all, it looks like good guys finish last anyway. What good has happened to me? All this time. Only bad things happening. No, he didn't say that. He maintained the right attitude. He cared for other people, even in his own suffering. Even when he was unfairly treated, he was always treating other people very fairly, very nicely, very well. And God always blesses that. God never forgets any seed that you sow. So when Joseph used his gifts and served these guys, and now this is my final point, this is the conclusion, that gift went far ahead of him and spoke for him. That one act that he did in the dungeon, in that jail where he was falsely incarcerated, it went miles ahead of him in the highest possible place that he could go in all of the land of Egypt, and spoke for him before Pharaoh, simply because he was willing to use his gift. He was willing to serve someone, especially when there was no reward. God rewarded him. Maybe those guys could have given him a few coins, a few shekels. But what God gave him was priceless. God gave him position and honor and power, and of course the wealth that came with that position. God gave him a chance to change lives, to save generations. In fact, he would tell his own brethren when he came into Egypt to buy food that God sent me ahead of you into Egypt to save lives as it is this day. All because he was willing to play game with God, to play ball. He was willing to avail himself for service. If Joseph hadn't done that, if he hadn't interpreted the butler's dreams, in 3 days that guy would still have been released. Pharaoh still would have restored the guy back to his old job. But the guy would have had no story to tell Pharaoh, because Joseph wouldn't have made an impression on him. He would only remember to tell Pharaoh that there was a guy back in jail who could interpret dreams, because Joseph had interpreted his dreams before. If Joseph had just kept quiet and said, no, that is not my business, I won't mind that, he would have missed a golden opportunity, because those 3 days would have come and gone, and he would have missed the chance of a lifetime, and he wouldn't be any wiser. How sad is that? How sad that you missed an opportunity that could have catapulted you to the highest levels, and you didn't even know that you missed it. You were so clueless because you're in your own little world, not willing to see anybody else, not willing to lift a finger to anybody else, not willing to even notice another person, and you only want to do something when you say, like, what's in for me, right up front. People who only focus on that, they'll get a little quick buck right away, but they are missing destiny. How sad is that? Quel dommage, like the French will say. You get this little ching change right now, and then your face is delighted, not knowing that you've missed a whole like a truckload of reward later. My friends, let us use our gifts. Let us have a heart for each other, because it's a heart for the other person that will stimulate the expression of the gift. That is your calling, and the calling is only expressed when you respond to the need. When you see a need and you step into fully, then God say, yeah. It's like I have a sharp machete. If I'm not in a place where I need to chop down something, that machete is useless. But when I see that forest and I go in, then I say, oh yes, I have a fine machete that I can use. Then I pull it out and I start chopping. But I have to first notice the forest needs some clearing. You notice the need of the people, and then you bring forth your gifts. The two of them meet. Need meets answer. Need meets solution, right? Question, answer. The two marry together and beauty happens. Let us not be spiritually constipated, because we are so backed up and we're suppressing our gifts and our calling, and we want the world to promise us something first before we step out. That is the reverse. That's not how it happens. We come in with our heart. We see other people's needs. We serve without regard to what we're going to get first. And then God says, well done, my child. Now here is your compensation. Joseph got the job of governor of Egypt, the most important job in Egypt. In fact, even Pharaoh's own household, Pharaoh didn't know what was going on. Joseph was feeding everybody in the country, not just in the whole country, but literally the known world at the time, because people would literally travel from many countries all over the world to come to Egypt to buy food. And this guy got this job. How? By the two basic things I said at the beginning. He had a heart to care about another person, to try and solve their problem. He used his gift. He used his gift. The person noticed that he had that gift. Then the gift, the result of that, the person went forth and told. The Bible tells us in Proverbs that our gifts will bring us before great men. So the gifts is a conduit that takes us to the place that we want to go. The using of the gift will drive you. It's a train that you ride to the high place that you want to go. So when you're sitting on the dream, on the gift, and you're not expressing it, there's a backup. There's a backup. You have to express it. It's like I don't know if you're going to put up by this, but it's like a lactating mother, a mom with a new baby, and she hasn't fed the baby for a while. Her breast is full. It's like it's gorged. It's uncomfortable. There's a backup in the system because it's supposed to be flowing. The child is supposed to be feeding. But when she hasn't, let's say she's working or she's been out of home for most of the day, by the time she gets back, it's uncomfortable. The breast is full and it is backed up in. So but when she begins to feed the baby, when the baby begins to suckle, and the flow continues, then she gets a release. So as she's blessing the child, she's getting some release. As she's feeding her baby, she's getting some help in her own body. It's the same way when we use our gifts. We're no longer constricted that way. As we flow in that gift, that calling that God has called us, we're blessing other people. And then we too will get blessed because God will never forget us. Because as we're sowing, our seeds will bear fruit. That is the law. That is a principle. You will never use your gift to serve somebody well and walk away empty-handed. It is not done. That is going against one of God's most staunchest, unshakable principle. There is nothing that He does that we can change. No principle that He has planted and enshrined that we can change. So don't worry about compensation. Worry about using your gift. Flow. Flow. Let it run. Like a water. Run. Streams of river. Go forth and feed people. Bless them. Don't worry. Some will appreciate it, some will not. But just remember, simply because they don't appreciate it doesn't mean that I'm going to stop. If you did that, then which means that you're expecting your reward to come from man. You're expecting those people to reward you. But if you get it, that promotion comes only from God. And that I'm doing this as unto the Lord, like the Bible says. Then I'm looking to His hand to bless me, not to people. Who knows the angle through which your blessing is going to come? You might be thinking that, oh, that guy might hold me up, or that woman might hold me up, or God has something completely different in mind. Okay, so be flexible, but above all, have a heart. When that sorrow of heart is in you, like it was in Nehemiah, when God puts that desire, when He puts in you that concern for something, it's for a reason. Don't just walk by and say, that thing,